So you remember the scene where Jack and Rose bang in this car? A lot of people always want to know, was there actually a car on Titanic? And the answer is yes, there really was a car. This was quite accurate in the movie. According to Titanic's cargo manifest, there was one vehicle on the ship and it was a 1912 Renault. So very fancy French luxury vehicle at the time. And that car belonged to this man here. This is William Carter. He was a first-class passenger from Philadelphia, PA. He was traveling with his wife and kids, and they all actually survived. Although his wife divorced him afterwards, claiming that he abandoned her and their children during the sinking. Anyway, the car was lost in the sinking. It's never been found, although many people have gone looking for it. After the sinking, there was an insurance claim made for the value of $5,000, which is equivalent to roughly $134,000 today. So was there a car? Yes. Did the car see any action like we saw in the movie? Probably not. Did Titanic Captain E.J. Smith actually save a baby? Yeah, kind of. Well, maybe. So in the movie, we see this happen to the captain. Now, surprisingly, there's very little known about the captain's last minutes because there were many different accounts as to what happened to him. And one of those accounts stated that he was last seen jumping into the water to save a baby. Some claim that he jumped into the water to save the baby. Some claim that he already had the baby and handed it to the steward. Other witnesses say that he made it to the overturned collapsible B, saw that it was full, and said, "All right, boys, good luck and God bless," and he swam away. And then there are those that say that they last saw Smith in Titanic's wheelhouse, just like they showed in the movie. But what we do know for sure is that Captain E.J. Smith, the millionaire's captain, did not survive the sinking. You may remember this scene in Titanic when the watertight doors are closing and all the guys are rushing to get out so they don't get trapped. And in the movie, they're panicking to get out. The one dude even risked getting his legs cut off trying to get to the other side. Now the question is, were the stokers and the firemen really trapped on the real Titanic? And the answer is no, they were not. So on the real Titanic, every single boiler room had an escape ladder, so people wouldn't be trapped. All they would have to do is climb the ladder and they could escape right on E deck. And I can even show you what that would have looked like for them. So this is the Titanic Honor and Glory animation. Over here, we see that watertight door they would have been rushing to. Now, in an emergency, a stoker or a fireman working down in the boiler room, they would have just climbed this ladder here. They would have gone up, and then eventually they would have reached Scotland Road on E deck. And once they got here, they could have gone straight up to the boat deck. So no, nobody was actually trapped. The movie was just being a little dramatic. What exactly happened to the bodies after the Titanic sank? As many of you know, 1,500 people perished in the sinking, but the majority of the bodies actually remained afloat because there were plenty of life jackets for everybody. In total, there were only 340 bodies that were recovered. Now, the White Star Line chartered 4 ships to go and search for bodies, and the first of those ships was the Mackie Bennett. Upon arriving at the wreck site, the Mackie Bennett quickly realized there were a lot more bodies than they anticipated. So what they would do is they would bring the body on board, check for identification, and then write a detailed description of the corpse. Each body was then either embalmed right on the ship, or if it had decomposed, it would be buried at sea. In total, the Mackie Bennett recovered 306 bodies, 116 were buried at sea, and 190 were brought on board. Today, the remains of 150 victims can be found in Halifax, Nova Scotia, including the grave of the now famous Joseph Dawson, who many have confused for the fictional Jack Dawson. Okay, hold up. If you're obsessed with Titanic, I got something good for you. So, a lot of you have asked me whether there's a version of the movie that includes all of the deleted scenes. And guess what? I just discovered this. What? This is a version of the movie that doesn't include any of that love stuff. No Jack, no Rose. Only history. This is what I've been waiting for years. How am I just discovering this now? This is so exciting because I always skip through the love stuff anyway. I don't really care about that. But basically, somebody made a fan edit, and if you go to this website, titanicofficers.com/titanicmovie.html, you can check it out yourselves. There's even a trailer on YouTube I was able to find. So this version includes the majority of the deleted scenes, basically anything without Jack and Rose. So there you have it. Maybe I'm the last person to find out about this, and you all knew, but I just saw this and I had to share. That's the website, titanicofficers.com. But yeah, enjoy. Okay, bye. Here's a deleted scene in Titanic that I always enjoyed because James Cameron gives us some fun foreshadowing of what's to come. So here they're getting a tour of Titanic's Gymnasium. Now, I want you to pay attention to Ruth, Rose's mom, and Rose because they make references to skills that are going to be crucial for their survival later on in the movie. So let's take a look.
And this is our new rowing machine. Care to try your hand, madam?
Don't be absurd. Can't imagine a skill I should likely need less.
The next stop on our tour will be the bridge. This way, please.
And of course, just a few hours later, Ruth finds herself in a lifeboat rowing with the unsinkable Molly Brown. And Rose gets a little bit aggressive. Also, don't punch people in real life, so TikTok doesn't remove this. Okay, thanks, bye. So, a few months ago, the History Channel released a Titanic-themed episode of History's Greatest Mysteries. I just watched it right now. You guys wanted my thoughts, so let me give you some thoughts. Okay, let me show you the intro of the show.
Now, for the first time since 1912, these critical documents will be revealed.
Okay, so basically they reveal the private journal of the man who led the British inquiry, and guess what? They claim new evidence, and there's no new evidence. Everything they show and they talk about, we already knew.
Will this information alter the accepted story of how and why Titanic sank?
It doesn't. They basically regurgitate all the facts that we already knew and present them as new information, even though it's not. It also highlights some facts that were completely irrelevant, like some of the watertight doors being open to let in the pumps and never being closed. So what? It was at the aft. It made no difference. There's some information that was just straight up inaccurate, claiming the Titanic was actually lost. So, verdict. It's another sensationalized documentary with dramatic music. Cool graphics, though. This documentary was much better. Let me tell you the story of the only Japanese passenger on Titanic. This is Masabumi Hosono, who was from Tokyo and was a second-class passenger on Titanic and actually survived. Hosono documented the entire experience on a letter he sent to his wife written on Titanic stationery. According to him, on the night of the sinking, a steward woke him up. He initially had trouble getting up to the boat deck because the crew thought he was a third-class passenger, but when he got to the boat deck, he saw there was a lot of commotion. He was standing in front of lifeboat number 10 when he heard an officer say, "Room for 2 more." He saw a man get on, and he took that opportunity and hopped on the lifeboat himself. Now, when he got back to Japan, he was publicly shamed for surviving because the media falsely accused him of either being a stowaway or dressing up as a woman to survive. He sadly lived out the rest of his life in shame until his death in 1939. However, in the late 90s, his granddaughter published the letter and the world got to see what actually happened, which restored honor to his family. Let me tell you about the only Mexican passenger on Titanic. His name was Manuel Uruchurtu, and he's got a pretty interesting story. So Manuel here was a wealthy Mexican lawyer who was a first-class passenger on Titanic, and he was traveling back to Mexico. On the night of the sinking, he was already aboard lifeboat number 11, this one right here. The boat was full, it was ready to be launched, but at that moment in time, there was a second-class lady who pleaded with the officer to be let into the lifeboat, saying that she had a husband and children waiting for her in New York. Manuel saw this and immediately gave up his spot to the woman, asking for one request: to go and visit his wife and his children in Mexico and let them know what happened to him should he not survive. Sadly, Manuel did not survive the sinking, but it's generally believed that the lady did in fact keep her promise. She traveled to Mexico, met with Manuel's widow, and told her about Manuel's final act of chivalry. So you probably remember the lookouts on Titanic. This is Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, and many people often ask, did the people in the crow's nest, aka the lookouts, did they survive? And the answer is yeah, they did. And in fact, all 6 of them did. Titanic had 6 lookouts, these 6 guys here, and they worked in pairs, and they would do 2 hours on and 4 hours off, so they didn't really get a lot of sleep. All 6 of these crew members were assigned to a lifeboat, so after the collision, they went to the boat deck and they were placed into a lifeboat, and that's how they survived. And in Titanic, there's a deleted scene that shows Frederick Fleet, the man who spotted the iceberg right there, in lifeboat number 6, not being able to row very well, so the unsinkable Molly Brown steps in to give him a hand, and he sort of just steps aside. So yeah, all the lookouts survived. Also, if you guys want to get your very own White Star Line sweater, you guys can copy your own at my merch store, TitanicGuy.com. The link is right here, TitanicGuy.com. You remember this officer in Titanic? Well, you're about to hear the real voice of the real Charles Lightoller from an interview in 1936.
I have had 4 shipwrecks and a fire during my 30-odd years at sea. But by far and away the worst of them all was the one I'm going to tell you about now, the loss of the Titanic. But barely 10 minutes had passed after the sound of the last bell when there were 3 sharp clangs on the crow's nest bell, followed by a cry from the lookout cage, "Ice right ahead, sir." When the boats were stripped and cleared, they were swung out and lowered to the level of the boat deck. Just a little while before they were ready to swing out, I happened to meet the captain, and I asked him, by cupping my hands over his ear, and yelling at the top of my voice, "Shall I get the women and children away, sir?" He just nodded, so I started to fill the first boat.
What exactly were these machines on the bridge of the Titanic? So this is an engine order telegraph, or just simply an engine telegraph, and they were used by ships till around 1950, and it was a way for the bridge to communicate down to the engineers and to the boiler room. It was a pretty simple system. Basically, the officer would give a command up here, there would be a bell on the receiving end, the engineer would then move the lever to confirm the command, and then there'd be a bell in the original telegraph. This is an example of one you would have found on Titanic. You can see the different orders you could give. Obviously, a head is to move the ship forward, and a stern is to move the ship backward. You'll also see orders for full, half, slow, and that was basically an indicator to the boiler room as to how much steam they needed to generate in those boilers in order to get the ship to either move full, half, or slow speed. Which is why Fred Barrett is telling everybody to hustle to generate enough steam for that full ahead order. Was there enough room for Jack on the door? This is the age-old question, the debate of all debates, so let me settle this once and for all. I'm gonna show you a deleted scene in Titanic that actually gives us the answer to this question. Also, quick side note, that's not even a door that they're on, it's like a side panel from the men's smoking room, so it's technically a board. Anyway, here's the scene.
It's just enough for this lady. We'll push it under.
Let me try at least, or I'll die soon.
We'll die sooner if you come any closer.
Jack says you'll push it under, which tells us it's an issue of buoyancy, not whether or not there was room. Also, James Cameron literally wrote it this way. He's been quoted to say, had he lived, the ending of the film would have been meaningless. The film is about death and separation. He had to die. He also said this.
I've never really seen it as a debate. It's just stupid. There's no debate. It's called writing. Yes.
Did Titanic's officers have their own crew quarters? Yes, they did, and I can show you where they slept. So here's the boat deck. The crew quarters were located right beside the bridge for easy access, so that's the bridge there, and this entire area, those were the crew quarters. That's where the captain and the 7 officers slept. Now let's take a look at that in extreme detail. So right here on the right side of the screen, we got the bridge. This is facing toward the bow, so the front of the ship. On the port side, we have all of the officers' quarters, so chief officer all the way down to the 6th officer. Then if you come around with me to the starboard side, we have Captain Smith's quarters. Looks like he gets his own private sitting room and then his bedroom and a bunch of stuff. And there's a captain's quarters in even greater detail, sitting room, bedroom, lavatory. Here's a picture of Captain Smith outside the officers' quarters. And here's another picture of Smith outside the portside officers' quarters. That's the officers' quarters going underwater in the movie. And this is what it looks like today at the bottom of the ocean. What's good, Titanic nerds? It's Raph the Titanic guy Avila here. Thank you so much for watching this TikTok compilation. If you guys enjoyed the video, please don't forget to drop a like and to subscribe to the channel and join our community of Titanic nerds. Also, let me know down in the comments, was there enough room for Jack on the door or the piece of wood, or was Rose just being selfish? Let me know. Also, don't forget to click some of these links here. Some of these videos are really, really cool. I think you're gonna like them. Or don't. I can't force you to do anything. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.